Welcome to you all. I don't know nobody of you. And I must explain myself in the first place for a very little but very important thing. Very few people of you, they approached me and they wanted to shake hands. And I refused that. I, I have to explain myself because the impression, of course, is not very nice. In fact, it's very bad. I will explain myself. When I entered this room, some person, her name starts with a U, she shook my hand. The result is this. That's not her fault in the first place, but it's a consequence of my age. You can ask about what my age is, and I will answer that. And of the fact that at my age it's normal to have medication which they call, well, I don't know how it's called in English, but it for the blood it thinks. So, well, I see some people already shaking their heads and they know what I mean. So that's my response to the few of you who wanted to shake my hand, but was very friendly, and the fact that I refused. I don't want to refuse, but I had to because of my health and presentation. Well, the program, as I prepared with Mira, two parts. Well, in fact, three. The first one I'm beginning now, that is to introduce myself a little bit more, that you know who I am and why I'm here and what my background is. The second part is that I will be happy to tell you more about the legal rules that are necessary to follow in the Dutch mental health care system. And the third part is that I will, well, I hope we will get that ready before the break, because the worst thing I can do is that I am, well, taking the break away from you. That answering the questions. I had 8 questions from the group who is represented here, and I'll try to answer those questions. But there is not mentioned yet one thing which I will mention now at the threshold, so to speak, of this meeting. That is the following. The material, the stuff that I'm talking about, will talk about, is very complicated. It is complicated. It's not your fault, it's not my fault, but it's, well, the consequence of the fact that in the mental health system, totally health system, there are very, very, very rules, many rules, in laws and in codes of conduct. What I do now, well, being a sort of a teacher for you, I did it very many times. And that the practice was that I told what I'm going to do now. I told, well, what is important, what are the most important rules. But, and I had, well, 6 hours or 8 hours to do that in the Rhino. Maybe you heard about the Rhino. But at the end of the last meeting with the students, I said, okay, thank you very much for the cooperation, but what we have dealt with now is just a very small part of what you will meet and have to handle in the practice. Because when you enter this building, you go to the client, the first thing you well, when there is a problem, the first thing you think, well, gee, what is the rule? What is the law? That was for me a reason to say to the students at the threshold of the room when they left the room, that listen, you are from this moment on covered by sort of a guarantee. So when something happens in this field, you are troubled with a question about what do I have to do now, considering the rules, considering the law, then you can mail me. The students, they do it. They do it very, very many times. And I'm very glad they do it. The reason they do it is not because I'm very genius. I'm not a genius. The reason they do it is because this part of your work is very, very, very sensitive. It is sensitive because there can be complaints. When there is a complaint, it is the worst part of your professional life. I have to tell you that now from the beginning, and that's one of the reasons that I'm here now, to try to avoid for you to be, well, invited by an organization dealing with complaints because a client thinks that you did your work not very well. And that's the reason that when you, from now on, from this day on, that's what I talk about with Mira.
I put it on another sheet here. Wait, here, your email address.
Oh yeah, there's my email address. When you note my email address, well, during this hour, then you know that you can reach me. You can write to me, and as far as possible, I answer rather soon, the same day, the day after, in the weekend. I like to do it because, well, my duty is to help you to avoid problems. You will have to deal with problems. That's the reason why people come to you. But when you can avoid the problems on the field of the law and the code of conduct, I will help you. If you are, well, not able to find out yourself or with the people you work with. So, well, that's the first thing I want to tell you, and now I've told you. Then a few words about who I am. I'm, as most of you are, a psychologist. That's when I started. Then I worked in the rehabilitation, physical and mental. During that period, I did the study for psychoanalysis. After that, I was a director of the Psychoanalytic Institute in the Netherlands. That was the time when psychoanalysis was treated rather friendly. That was history. And after that, because I had to make deals with the insurers and with the government and everything. That was okay. And then I went, that was my last formal position. I was in the board of directors of a psychiatric institution in the northern of Holland. I think, well, sort of Arkin or Ingeest. Maybe you work there or you know what it is. It is, it is a fusion of many institutions. That's what I did. In that period, somewhere in that period, I fell in love with the stuff, the material for which I'm here now, which is the law for our field and the code of conduct. Because I think it is of the greatest importance for you to know what the patients expect you to do as a behavior, as a professional behavior. Because more than, well, every more, patients also are very well accustomed to, acquainted with the law and the codes of conduct, and they tell you, well, I have to ask you a question, why did you say that? Or can I have an insight in my file or everything? And of course you have to know how to answer, because if a conflict can be avoided with a client, of course it's, well, the first thing you want to do. That is to avoid conflict. But the first thing you want to do is to help the client, but the second thing is that you want to avoid the conflict. Well, I will, that's who I am. And I'm still giving, well, the thing I do with, well, it's again, but with the email is that the students are still emailing me, and what I do now, I love to do, because I imagine myself that, well, maybe you can be helped. I will mention, talk about the most important regulations, the rules that are important for your work here, whether you are a psychologist or whether you are in another position but doing healthcare, giving healthcare. But first of all, I want to ask you, because that's always the habit and it's a good habit, do you want to ask already something now, before we really have started? No. Then we start. I will talk with you about 4 legal systems in which the rules of in the healthcare, the formal rules are stated. The first one, I will, yeah, here it is, the wet BIG. It's a rather compact name. Law on professionals in individual healthcare. It is a formal regulation of the professions in the healthcare, in all healthcare, also for the doctors, also for the nurses. And the goal, in a few words, is to protect the rights of patients. The means to get to this goal, I mentioned 3. How do they, well, thought it was a good way to reach to that goal? 1, stating and developing rules about levels of training for the professionals. And the levels of training, when you have got to that level, then there is a system that in 5 years, every 5 years, you have to renew your, well, your expertise, but you have to prove it. It's not enough to say, well, yeah. Don't bother me with the question. Of course, I worked 5 years, so of course I know everything. Well, the people, especially the people in government, they will hardly look at you when you say this. Just show it to me. So it's rather complicated. So it's the second system in this law, that is the register. The register, that is a system in which are included the most important professions of healthcare. I must add immediately, it is a choice from government and from the professional groups and the representatives of those groups to say, well, these are the professions with the most important responsibility in mental health care, but in all health care. For mental health care, there are two professions that are included in this system, in the register: healthcare psychologist and psychotherapist. And for the rest, it is doctor, nurse, pharmacist, etc. It's 11 professions. It is a heavy, it's a heavy burden. Well, that sounds so dramatic, but it is a heavy burden in this way that more than in any other group, the person who is registered in the register of the BIG, he has to be careful for complaints. Well, you always have to be careful for complaints, of course, but when you have a complaint in this system, there is, we call it a group, a committee, a college, how you call it, for processing complaints. It is we talked about it already, but it is for many workers in healthcare the most horrible provision to come home and see an envelope with of the secretary of this group, because you have to defend yourself. So there was a client who is not happy about you, who does not love you, or maybe he loved you but not your work, and then he complained, or she complained, and complained to this committee, and then you have to defend yourself. The consequence of the rulings of these committees, that are groups, 6 people, lawyers and people of your same profession, can be bad, because you can get a warning. Well, then you get a warning. You don't want to get a warning, but well, there's a warning. That doesn't influence anything. But after that, you get what they call a reprimand, a reproach. It's a formal measure. You don't want to have that, because in some cases it is in the register, it is noted that Mr. or Mrs. has got a reprimand for her work. You don't want to be seen as that. And then after there, well, there are more measures, more fears, and at the end, the possibility is that this committee, this college, the disciplinary college, you can call it, that they kick you out of the register, which means that you are not allowed to do the work anymore. And well, there is a possibility that when you are very doing your best, that you can get dingen, but well, it hardly ever happened. But you must make a huge mistake to be kicked out of the register as a mental health psychologist or as a doctor as a dingen. And well, I did this work. I was a member of this committee for 15 years. It very seldom happens that somebody has to kicked out. It doesn't sound very friendly, but well, that's reality. To be removed from the register, more friendly. And maybe you can guess that in many of those situations, well, in the 5, I was a part of the decision, that is the sexual abuse of a client. It never stops. It always repeats itself. It's horrible. But there are also there are other situations. I don't know whether I have the time. Maybe you must say, well, please go on and go on, because my tendency is to tell you all I think that you want to know, and maybe, but well, I simply ask, do you want to hear one example of conduct of a colleague who was kicked out of the register, not for sexual? Do you want to hear? Okay, I'm glad to, because I prepared myself for that. Well, going through the files in my home, it was a rather it was sort of silly. There was a client, a very friendly client, and she came into the treatment room, and she said to the psychotherapist, that was what he was, that before we start, is it okay that I put my telephone in my bag and keep it open, because my little daughter is sick, and I talked with the one who is taking care now, that if there is something happening, then she can call me. So then I hear the phone, and then I must leave the room here. So I hope it doesn't. But what happened? There was the bag, there was the phone open, and after I think 10 minutes, the phone made a noise. It was a noise. Well, it was. You will understand why I mentioned the noise, because the psychotherapist stood out of his chair, and he went to the bag, and he made the sound of a cow. I don't think this is a situation to do that. Will make myself ridiculous, but he makes the sound of a cow, and then the client said, "What is this? What do we have now?" Well, it said, "Well, I noticed that here is another line of communication, another language, another line, another method." And because you already prepared, I don't believe the story about the baby, because you want to talk with me on this way, with this sound. Okay, I agree. And so he made the sound himself. Well, what do you think about it? He asked. Well, said the client, I think you were completely crazy, and now I leave. And then she left the room, and he opened the window. The window looked upon the street where the client was walking then to her home, and he shouted out of the room, you flight, you're borderline, you flight." Well, this is not normal standard in our profession. In fact, it is horrible. So she complained, and for that complaint, we had to decide that this was, symptomatic for the level of care. And afterwards, he went he had his appeal, but that was maintained. So this is one example of what can happen if you are making very, very, very bad choices in your room. But it happens seldom. But this is the disciplinary system. And another system is, and I keep that short because the consequences of the other system, complaint system, that applies to almost everybody who's working in healthcare. But the consequences of the fact that you have to, present yourself to those people are not that bad, because you can go on working with the fact that well, a complaint officer, together with others, said that you did not your work, but you don't get a warning, you don't get a reproach, you're not kicked out of the register, that's all. So there are two systems, one of the wet BIG, but only for the people who are in the register of the wet BIG, and there is a broader system which, well, handles and copes with every kinds of complaints, and that, well, what can happen is that, well, the complaint is grounded, and then the people who are responsible say, well, the complaint is grounded and it's not a good feeling, and when it's, well, that is transported to the people in your institution or in your professional surroundings, then you don't want to be a person who had a complaint who was grounded, but that's all. It's bad, you don't want to have it, but it's not that fierce as in the wet BIG. Okay, that's enough about for me, for the wet BIG, if there is no question about this. Yes?
Yeah, can I ask you?
Sorry, question?
As I know, professional psychologists don't have to be registered in BIG. But you
Sorry,
said-
sorry, a bit louder, please. Yeah.
As I know, the profession psychologists don't have to be registered in BIG.
They don't, yeah,
But
don't,
as you said before, healthcare psychologists, this profession have to be registered in BIG. So I'm a little bit confused. This is two different professions, or
there are different professions. You mean the professions who are, can be a subject for a complaint in the wet BIG and other professions?
No. I mean, my question is exactly, as I know, psycho. Я, может, там
Okay.
As I know, the profession psychologist
Yeah,
don't have to be registered in BIG. In BIG.
true.
Yeah, it is. But you said before that healthcare psychologist, that profession have to be.
Well, that's a title. You have the title psychologist, which is not protected. That's free. But the title healthcare psychologist, you have to go to the Reno, and then you are member of the register. So there are two titles. One title is psychologist. Everybody can call his or herself a psychologist. Your neighbor can do it. Everybody can do it. When you work as a psychologist, well, then there are rules, but you can call yourself a psychologist. Then you are not, then the horrible things I mentioned now, that you're kicked out of any register, will not happen because you are not a member of the register, because you are just a psychologist, which is, I hope, and when you are a psychologist who, well, you went further in the training, you went to the Reno 2 years, and you are, well, you are approved on dingen, then you can be a healthcare psychologist. And that's a formal title. A clinical psychologist is the specialist of the healthcare psychologist. It's also a formal title.
This is very important information. Thank you so much. And could you please repeat again?
Reno, the Reno, R-E-N-O, and that is the institution to which you have, well, you have to go there and try to get a place in the educational system, try to get a place in an institution for a practical place there, and then working 2 years with supervision and everything.
But you have to speak Dutch for that. Yeah, it's necessary, right?
It is very, very, very hard for you to enter the register, to be a healthcare psychologist. When you are here, and I hope that for you, well, you will succeed, but you hear many, and you speak Dutch not fluidly but good enough, which is really is well, they demand that. Then it's possible to work as a healthcare psychologist or a psychotherapist, but it's a long way. It's a long way. And most people I talk with, they advise against it. They say, let's be very, very happy that your people coming here, that you can get a place as a psychologist or a mental health worker without the title, which is a formal title, but with high demands, health care psychologist.
Thank you. And I have another question to ask.
Yes, yeah, but
So, if it means that these ethical rules, what you shared with us already now and later, it's only about this professions who is in healthcare system and in big register. It's only for them, or so I'm not there. So
the measures I mentioned, do you mean that?
what?
For instance, the warning or the kick out of is that the question?
Yes.
Yeah? Well, I see you're doubtful.
Maybe, like, I mean, вы поняли, что я сказала, чи ні? Да. Я сказала, які не бік. Ти що неправильно сказала, чи я? Вибачте, I'm sorry, I'm not sure about if my English is correct, so.
Yeah, she's talking about she doesn't have this big registration and she doesn't know if she will get this. How relevant this information for Ukrainian psychologists in that case?
Yeah, thank you.
How? Help even, wat?
I think what she's describing is how relevant is it for us being not in the big
Yeah.
register
Yeah.
and knowing this about these committees because we will not be part of it.
It's for you. It's not very important to be in the big register. No. It's not important at all. No. For you, it's not important at all. It's only important when you want to grow in your profession and be a specialist or something more. But it's absolutely no. Most psychologists are not healthcare psychologists. They are simply psychologists, and they have a very good job in any place in the healthcare system. So it's absolutely not necessary. But it's only because I want to, and maybe I talked already too much about this big, because most of you will not reach this, this system. But no. Don't think that you are that you're a lousy professional when you're not a Ursula.
Yeah, maybe I can add a little bit because this was just the first point. That all the other things are relevant for all psychologists.
Oh yes.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Thank you so much, yeah.
Yeah.
But maybe we can
For instance,
go towards the question.
sorry?
Maybe we can gradually go towards the questions that we have enough time for the question.
We have enough time for the. Do we have enough time for the question?
I think if we all continue now towards the question.
Okay. The second system, which is important for everybody, they call it the second one, the medical treatment contract. That also is a law for protecting patients' rights. Not only in Holland, I think maybe in Ukraine as well, you can tell me, but the accent on patients' rights is very, very important, more important almost every year. And many of the laws and the systems and the code of conduct are centered around the rights of the patient. The patient to, I can give examples, but because of the time I will withhold myself. But maybe you are, I'm curious to know, there is a system here the ground of this law is that your relation with the patient is a contract. It is a contract. You have the patient asks you something and you have to give it. And both sides, you must know what is necessary, what must be done, that. Then the law I mentioned now, the PGBO, that it covers all sides, almost all sides of the contract, which in fact, in reality, means that there are a whole list of obligations for the worker. And those are the rights of the client, the obligations of the worker. Maybe you know the term of the informed consent. Have you heard it, the informed consent? Informed consent, well, because it sounds rather, well, it sounds a bit romantic almost, but informed consent, it means that when you meet a client has a question, and you have your idea how to deal with it, but you have to agree with the patient. In former times, doctor knows best. The patient comes to you and says, well, okay, I hear your complaint and this is what I will do. Informed consent is a very important principle for all of you, not only for the ones in the big register, but for all of you. And that means that you have to tell the patient, and the patient has to consent, he has to agree, has to tell the patient what you want to do, given the complaint, given the problems, and why you want to do it. And then the patient has the right to, of course, has the right, but, well, now I say of course, but 50 years, 30 years ago, it was not natural. And now I said, well, thank you very much for how you explained it, but I don't take it. Can't we negotiate another line of treatment? And that is what they call, and that's a title of the last years, shared decision making. Shared decision making. You share with the patient the decision you want to make about the treatment or the investigation. Shared decision making. And in this law, the PGBO, they've taken up some of the principles. There are many. I will mention a few. The most important, in fact, is the privacy, the confidentiality. It is very, very, very important. Because you realize, and I think you all do realize, that things that you talk about with your client must be kept, well, when I say kept a secret, it sounds a bit forensic, but you know what I mean. The patient must trust you. And that's the reason why before, I always said to my students, please, even before the client sits in the chair, tell him that everything which happens here, not only everything which is told here, but everything which happens here, I keep it confidential. There are a few, if I had more time, I would quote, there are a few exceptions, but in 99% of the cases, what happens between you and the client must be kept secret. Very, very important. And that, of course, is the reason or the ground for a lot of complaints, because that some of our colleagues, they, well, have the idea that they for themselves can decide what must be kept secret and what easily can be told to the family doctor or to a colleague, which is a very sensitive field because it all begins with the trust the patient must have to you, and that is in the law. And when there is a complaint about it and the complaint is grounded, then you did not do the keystone of your work almost is the confidentiality. And also, there's a lot of rules in the thing. I mention one, and that is the rule about the termination of treatment. There is one question in which I will talk about it a bit longer, but it is a contract. The contract means that from both sides you have to, behave yourself according to that what was put down in the contract. But it is possible that one of the two parties, you or the client, thinks, I don't like it anymore. I don't want to be part of this contract anymore. When the client says that, it is the right of the client. The client can leave the room. The only thing he has to do is to pay for the last meeting, and that's all. It's not for you. You have the duty to avoid it. But for us, for the caretakers, there are very, very strong conditions before you, from your part, one-sided can leave the contract. There must be, and it is called in the law, the gewichtige redenen, but significant or important reasons to do it. What are those important reasons? Well, I will mention when there is one case brought by one of you here, and then I will talk about it a little bit later. But I think because there are rather many complaints about the fact that one of our colleagues entered did not enter the contrary. He ended the contract because thinking that going on did not have any sense. Well, that can be a good reason, but not just because of an impression that, maybe it's better that we stop. It's much more fierce, so to speak. Okay, that was the second one. Is there a question about this WGBO? No. Then we have what we call the AVG. AVG, it sounds as many words. It's not very beautiful to pronounce, but the AVG, but it's the General Data Protection Contract, and it is a European law. Maybe you know it. It is a European law. It doesn't. It came into existence in 2018, and it's about privacy. It's a law about privacy, and it is important for you to know that it exists because some people, especially when they love the law, they talk with you about things you ought to do according to the lines of this AVG. It is a rather bureaucratic, very bureaucratic system, European, but every of the European, the countries of the European community, or European Union, I must say, they have to follow those lines. European Union, of which I hope that Ukraine will be a member in, when things go on as they go now, then Ukraine can be a member of the European Union in 2030, when the procedure now. And we have a Dutch president of the NAVO, you know, and in Holland there is very much sympathy, so I think that will happen. But the AVG, that is the central law about privacy. Very, very, very important for you, because our work is dominated by privacy. Otherwise, people wouldn't come to your room when they couldn't trust that. And then there's the last one with a horrible ding, WKKGZ, forget it. But it's about medical care, quality, complaint, and dispute. They brought together other laws now, and it is the last legislation system with which I will annoy you now. And the key element of that is good care. It sounds a rather broad concept, good care. But there can be a complaint of a client and says, well, what happened between me and my caretaker, it was not good care. And then the complaint officer, together with you, are following the lines of what you have to do in your profession and have to decide yes or not, it was good care. And it's in this law, the complaints in a broader sense are implied. Also, there is a system, and everybody, and for you it is important when you work with clients, in what position they're in, that you have a connection with a complaint officer. So when a client is not content with you, is not happy with you, then you have the duty to be able to tell the patient, well, you're not happy, I'm not going, but you can tell, you can give your complaint, bring it on to the complaint officer. You must have a complaint to a complaint officer. Many of the institutions have one, and some of the private practices have one, but you have to have, and that's new in this law, a connection with a complaint officer to offer to your patient when the patient is not happy with you, or happy with you but not with what you have done. Okay, well, those are in a more than a few words, maybe too many for the time. How long do we have now? Time? Okay, no. Do you have questions about these, well, main outlines of the legal system in Holland when it goes to the obligations of professionals? You're all professionals. The obligations are, for all of you, very important. For a little group, big, more important, but forget it. Forget it now. Later on, you have to know. Is there a question? Yes.
If I understand right, all these organizations try to protect patients, clients.
Yes, yeah.
Which organization can protect us?
Very.
Because it also can be some situation from client side.
Yeah. Well, normally, well, there is not, to answer you in a few words, there is not an organization who protects you. The best protection is the same, the protection is the law itself, because the client knows what his or her rights are, but you know what your duty is. So the best protection against a complaint is to know what your duty and to know the law. It is terrible. It is an ocean of rules and all kinds of parts of the law, and that's the reason why I always think. I always tell the students I have, please, don't go through the whole book of the law. Don't do that. But, well, maybe read about it once and forget it and talk about more the content of the field. But when there is a trouble, ask me what to do. But you're very right. We have, and maybe you, and then stop and go on. But please don't worry, or worry, and please be mad at me. But in most of the time with my students, I said, I hope you can imagine yourself that it is a privilege that people come to you to tell their problem, to give their problem to you. It is a privilege. Why is it a privilege? Because there is, they trust you. So please do the patient, but all yourself, well, a favor, maybe it's bad English, but I hope you know what I mean. Well, take good care of the situation. The situation is that a patient tells things to you which he or she will only tell to you because there is the promise, because you promised that, the law promised that he can tell that. So, yes, but when there is a complaint, of course you have to defend yourself. Then we're further. There is a complaint. You have to defend yourself, and most of the time you have to use, when it's a serious complaint with a serious danger for a serious measure against you, you have to take a lawyer at your side to help you. But you're very right. This is the situation. The patient, he's the vulnerable part of the contract. He's vulnerable. You're mighty. You know everything. You can do it, and the patient knows nothing. He's in a bad condition, vulnerable. So well, that's a division of the power. The patient has the power. You have the power, but the patient has well, he has the right to, well, he has the right to trust you and believe you when you say, you can believe me. And that's because most clients now, they know that you must follow the law and the code of conduct. The code of conduct, it's here. Beroepscode van psychologen. That's for everybody who is working as a psychologist. It's the code of conduct, and you can find it on the internet. The code of conduct in English. That's the only thing of all the laws I mentioned now. Well, I didn't mention it yet, but it's you can find it in. And there, it's also terrible. It's more than hundreds of articles about, well, secrecy and giving permission to look into the file and everything. But you know it is there, so when you want to get an impression, what is expected from you, you can go. And maybe I don't know the means you have, Mira, to help your friends here to have, yeah?
It's very easy to look it up. If you just fill this in
Yeah.
Google, it comes up.
It comes up immediately.
I just,
Yeah.
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 Can I ask you?
Sorry.
Can I share confidence information about person if it's danger for life or health?
Very good question. It is one of the very, very good question, and maybe every day something it's applicable. Normally you have to keep your mouth shut, but there is a principle in the law, the healthcare law, which is called a conflict of interests. Well, I hope I can, in a few words, I know, Mira, explain it to you, but I want to ask It is a conflict of duties. You have the duty to keep your mouth shut, to keep it. But also you have the duty to avoid serious danger to the client itself or to another party. And it is you, in the end, who has to decide, is this a situation in which I must break the confidentiality and do what I think the best thing to do. I'll give you one example. When the patient has a huge conflict with the employer, and he tells you, when I see the employer on the street and I drive my car, I can assure you I will just put the gas thing and I will kill him. I'm sure. Well, that's a danger for the employer. But you know the client. And it's up to you. There's no other measure. There's no other guideline. It's up to you. You know the client, and you know how to evaluate. Is it true? How is the chance? You don't know. The best thing then is to talk with every complicated situation. Talk with a colleague. Please talk with a colleague. And I almost terrorized my students always with one thing. It's in Dutch, wie schrijft, die blijft, but it means more or less that what you write, it will remain. Please, every measure you take, write it in the file. Because when afterwards you have to, defend yourself, or in what situation? For instance, this situation, it is enough when you consider the risk. You know the client, you think he told me that, the employee is in danger, but knowing this client, knowing his tendency to be or behave as a big boy or anything, I don't think that this is a situation that I have to warn the employer. But when you think it's serious, then you can do it. When it is a mistake, he didn't drive the car to the employer. It's not for you. They will not reproach you because you thought about it. You made the balance, and that's with the conflict of and that many situations it's applicable. But it is enough to know. Well, there is one side which is the danger for the client itself, for instance, suicide, or for another person. But there is the other side that I must keep my secrecy. It's enough when you think about it and note what you consider, what the result of that is. Because when the employer is in fact caught by the car of the thing, well, it's not your fault. You thought about it, and maybe the result of your considerations, was not right. But that's the result. The result is not important. Important is whether you thought about it, and you thought about it considering what you know about the client. Is that the answer enough? No.
And how we can find an employee?
Sorry?
No, you said that we should warn employee, and how we can find.
You have to do an effort. It's a very good question, in fact. It's a very good point, because it cannot be nobody can ask you to go on a hunt for the employer. You have to do the reasonable effort. You know, the lawyers, I spent the half of my life with lawyers doing this work. And they love the word reasonable. So you must make a reasonable effort to to warn the employer in this case. Reasonable, but that is not going to the end. It's not putting everything aside and there's one thing and one thing only, and that is to find the employer. No, you must do a reasonable thing. And when it's not, you can go to the police and not to the employer. That you must a reasonable effort of which you think, well, that can help the situation. You see, reasonable.
So, for example, we can go to the police.
Oh, of course, sure. When the result of your considerations is, yeah, it's very serious, yeah, you can go to the police, absolutely. Yeah.
If I was not right, a client can blame me.
And yeah, I'm very glad they do. When the client blames you, and you have to account for it, again, for instance, against a complaint officer, and in the file you have written what you thought about, what your considerations were, and that you talked about it with a colleague. You didn't mention the name of the client, but you can talk about with a colleague about everything. And you can show it. Well, this was what I thought. Well, I was wrong. The conclusion was wrong. But you're not punished for a wrong conclusion. You will be punished for wrong considerations. So when the patient does a complaint, in that case, you're safe, considering that you have the good consideration and it is written in the file. Very, very, very important. So in many cases, when I was a member of the Dingen, then the one who was had a complaint, he said, well, of course, no, you cannot find it in the file, but I talked about it with a colleague. That's not enough. Please write about it. Write about what you think. Write about what you think. And then, when you're wrong, well, then you're wrong. You cannot look in the glass bowl. So what happened? It's on. Okay. But it happens many times. This kind of thing. Spouses with I will kill my husband and well. Okay.
Can I have one question?
Yeah. There are also some questions that were prepared, but of course.
Yeah. Okay. The last spontaneous question.
For example, if the client wants to use psychologist in his purpose, for example, client has a court and he wants to do this court, his consultation with the psychologist involved on the decision of the court. What to do in this situation? For example, client tell that, oh, I have panic attacks.
I have.
Panic attacks.
A panic attack. Yeah.
And I asked, what do you want to receive at the end? Oh, I want to know why I have this panic attack. Not I want to finish with this, and I understand that I know that he has a court. And what to do in these situations? I understand that he wants to use me, and he wants to use our system, Dutch system.
But what is your duty then? You think he wants to know what is the reason for the panic attack?
Yeah. And
But he wants to use it in court, you mean?
Yeah.
To get?
No, maybe after, because it was only one session.
Yeah.
But understand that he plays. He doesn't have a panic attack. And
Ah.
how do you solve your panic attack? Oh, I just listen in mantra, or my girlfriend give me a glass of water. No, it's.
But when the patient he asks you for a declaration of the panic attack, I understand,
Yeah.
to use it in court.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's allowed.
No, he did not say me that he wants to use it in court, but I know that he has it.
But he can use it in court.
Yeah.
Yeah, he can use it in court.
You can use it. He can use it.
He can use your declaration in court.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. But do you want to make this? No, you don't. Why don't you want to? Because there is no panic attack. Well, then don't do it.
Because he wants to use psychologist,
Well,
For example, some clients, they told that, oh, I have a depression, tell to my employee that I cannot work.
yeah, yeah. You know, this is very hard to put on paper, but I know what you mean. Listen, this is an ocean of this material, but when there's one golden rule. There's one golden rule for the psychologists. We don't give a statement which has a judgment in it. For instance, the patient is so sick that he or she cannot work. You can give a statement. That's not forbidden, and most of our colleagues do it, with the facts. The patient says, well, I want a declaration. And I say, well, what I can give you is a declaration with only the facts. The fact is that you came to me. The fact is that in this period we worked together, and that's it. But this is a hardly sensitive matter because there is, for instance, an insurance company or the medical advisor of an insurance company. He asks you, he gives you a lot of questions for an insurance for whatever. For to buy a house, you have to, well, you understand me. Then the medical advisor of this company wants to know what is the risk when I give, when my company gives the money to this person. And then he asks you a lot of things about this person. What is the risk of the suicide? What was it the risk before, etc. In that case, when it is a very nasty, you have those nasty medical advisor, and he's going on implying, give me an email, and we make the thing together. But normally you can give the facts, and only the facts, and not an evaluation of the facts. Not this is a bad, you can imagine, I think very much with the problems between, well, in marriages. You must be very, very careful not to give a judgment about he or she is a good parent, because that's not your duty. Apart from the fact that you really don't know. You only know what the patient tells you. But it's very sensitive, so and there's a lot of lines about it, but these are really serious things. I know, Mira. I only have to.
Right? I think it's even better when everyone asks these questions.
No. Okay. Well, the next question is forbidden, I understand. But, well, when it's very important, well, I leave this building after my thing, because you have your own things to take care of, and but you can ask me on my way out, so or on my email thing. Okay, the questions.
Yes.
You're waiting for it for an hour, yeah.
So these are questions that you all asked, and maybe some people who weren't there, who aren't there today. But...
Okay. Is the one who put this question, is he in the room here? No, because
I'm
no.
not sure if they want to keep it a secret or if they want to
Oh,
be
that
open to
yeah. But everything we talk about here is well under the umbrella of the secrecy also, and no names are mentioned and no institutions are mentioned. But at the same time, the condition that were.
I'm curious if it's the same. Is it exactly the same?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
the
okay.
same. Yeah. See, yeah. Well, that's about a client. Yeah, he comes from time to time, and here we have already the first occasion, the occasion I mentioned that I would go, time, a little bit on it. Here we have a client. You have to ask yourself, can I go on fulfilling my part of the contract? Because the contract is the patient comes to me and said, will you help me? And I said, okay, I will help you, but then we have to make a deal. You have to be in my office then and then. This is the method I do, this is the treatment, please follow it. When the client, the patient, does not follow it, then there's a problem. It happens, and it happens more than once. It happens more than once. You have the right, well, that's when we have a right. You have the right to say, well, we cannot go on this way. But be careful, but don't do it in a rush. Don't do it too early. When the patient is not like this one, he's going on and on. You said, well, when you go on behaving like this, we cannot work. But there's not something you have to say once. You have to repeat it. And you have to warn. It sounds not very sympathetic, but you have to warn. If it goes on then I have to breach the contract. I have to, to kick you out in a very, very nice way. You have to do that. That is one of the significant reasons, the important reasons on which you have the right to breach your kind of the contract. And here it's one of the most important ones. It's not willing to follow the rules you agreed upon together in the beginning of the treatment, and it's going on to misbehave. So then you have a duty. Well, I mentioned two. One is to go on and try to restore the relation. And when that does not help, you have to really to finish. Then you have the duty to sit down with the patient, if he or she wants to do that with you, and talk about what do we do now? Because here we cannot go on further. I'm very sorry, but I have to decide it. But what do you think is the best? You have to make an effort to do that. That's also a reasonable effort. Most of the time, but most of the time, the client says, well, you please go on. You kick me out, I don't want to talk with you anymore. But when the patient is still coming and say, well, you kick me out, okay, what is my future? Then you have to do the effort to talk with the patient about what can be done then. You have to do that. You have to write it down. You have to write it in the file that you talk with the patient about the future. When then nothing is found out between the two of you, you did your work. You did your work. But there must be very, very good, very important reasons to breach your part of the contract. That's the situation. Patient has the right to walk out any minute. You don't have the right to walk out or make the patient walk out. Yeah, and there is one colleague sitting opposite me who put on her, maybe you had a question?
Me?
Yeah?
No, not
Oh, it was just, okay. No, maybe you removed the fly from the air, but I'm sorry. But those are one of the important reasons.
Could I ask?
Yeah.
I think it was my question. You told I have to write to the file. With whom I can share this file? Only with me?
The file,
Yeah.
you can share it, well, depending on the situation. It is.
But what about confidence information?
What about?
To keep confidence information.
Well,
About person.
confident information is just for you. It is between you and the
If
client.
I will share information a bit about maybe it's danger for this person behave like this,
Yeah.
with whom I can share this information.
Well, the information is another thing that share the file. Share the information can be anonymous. You can say, I have a client, there this and
For
this. And,
whom? I can say for whom.
well, in many situations, it's not necessary to tell who the client is.
Just without names.
Well, of course, you can say, I have a client, lives in Amsterdam, this is the age, this is the complaint, these are the problems.
So I can share information without names, for example, with him, with municipality where I'm working. Yes?
Without names,
Without
and,
names.
and as in the AVG, that is the law I mentioned, you must share it in such a way that it is not that it's not recognizable, that nobody will know who the person is. So don't mention, for instance, a rather exceptional profession, or he's the president of this company.
If municipality will ask me who is this person, what I can say, I can
Nothing.
say.
With the police,
Because without police, nothing.
well, in very well. Then send me an email. Because I'm very glad you did, because this is the field. Well, this may be one of the most important things. With whom am I entitled to give the information as it really is about the person? And the police is trying to seduce you to tell everything. That's their work, and well, we have to respect that. But you are not entitled to give it, but well, in a very exceptional situation. But normally, the file and what is put in the file by you, between you and it is confidential. It's confidential, with the consent of the patient, who says, "Well, it's okay. Well, tell everything." For instance, with the insurance company, they want to have an insurance, and they say to you, "Well, tell everything," and then you have the consent of the client. That's an exception. In the conflict of duties we talked about, there's an exception, but normally it is for you, and especially with the police, be careful.
Okay.
Not only careful, but yeah.
And may I also ask something similar, but another question? I'm a psychologist in location for Ukrainian people.
Yeah.
Just one house for can be 70 or 80 people from Ukraine.
Yeah.
Of course, it's no privacy. It's like some difficult situation inside. And officially, my client is Humenta, because they paid me money for my work.
Yeah.
And sometimes, for example, manager of this location can tell me, like, could you please invite that or this guy for
Yeah.
consultation, because this guy dangerous for another people in this location.
Yeah.
But very really often this guy doesn't want to come for me. But manager of location
Yeah.
paid me money, like for psychologist, and waiting for some reaction and some conversation with some dangerous guy.
Yeah.
And in this case, what can I do?
What do
How
you
I
want?
can-
What do you want to do?
No, I want to keep.
Be honest. What do you want to do in that case?
I want to help to make like normal conversation between Ukrainian people, because in a lot of locations, it's right now it's really terrible situation, like emotional situation.
Yeah, of
And
course.
I want to help like, try to build some normal conversation between people.
Yeah.
And for example, somebody doesn't want to build this conversation.
Yeah.
Can I do something or not?
Well, who is forbidding you to do that? You can do it. You want to do that.
Yeah, but how I can like invite this person to come to me
Yeah.
if he or she is really dangerous for another people, but position of this person, I'm okay, everything fine with me, just all people around me,
Yeah.
not normal, yeah.
Yeah. It's for you to decide. It's also an evaluation. Someone says, well, I'm not a danger, or I'm not a pain in the ass, to say it very, very simply, for other people. It's for you to decide. It's for you. There is no rule, there is no law about this.
And for example, if I also understand this person really dangerous for another people,
Well,
what can I do?
for two other people is enough to, well, when you decide that the danger is real, then of course you can make your decision. But it's for you to decide. There is no there is no instrument to decide, well, this is a real danger. But it's for you to decide. That's your duty. That's your duty. One person is in danger, says that there's another. It's for you. It's for you. It's not only for you, but you can talk about it. But that sounds. I mentioned before. I can say it many times. Talk about it with a colleague. But in the end, it's your decision.
So the problem is also that your location manager wants you to talk to that person, and you are like, I don't know, right?
Yeah.
I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
That is your question, right?
And in
Yeah.
general, in the Netherlands,
Yeah.
is it possible to make some consultation with people who doesn't want? Or no, for example, if a teacher or, I don't know, employer or colleague can say, please, this person is dangerous. Is it possible to make some conversation with this guy or lady or not?
You're wondering if it's your obligation to see that person, right? Yeah, and you're saying it's up to you.
But well, I say, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? You don't want to see the patient.
But also, can I ask something? Do you have social working role at Mentor? Because now we have the situation that we can employee psychologists as social worker and psychologists,
Yeah.
same role, and of course you do more psychological role. But one of the type of obligation in this role is to be proactive. I think because of this, he meant to reach out to you and ask, please, could you help the people to make
Yeah,
it happen?
it's my question.
Yeah,
but
it's
what
confusing.
could I do?
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of role like this, but like from psychologist side, you couldn't do this. It's kind of strange. You know, patient need to go to you for.
It's always like double
I think-
responsibility
yeah.
for me.
And you're also part of the intervision group, right? I think this is a beautiful question. I think that we can also discuss within the intervision group
Okay.
together.
Thank you.
So short question then. So if I understand right, the confidence information about my client, I can open only for police, right?
With some exception, yeah, right.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
not my-
yeah. The exception can be important.
Should I continue?
Yeah.
Okay, next question. Yeah. I changed it a little bit because there was another question that came in. It's about how to work with teenagers and parents. And the question related
Well,
to that was,
I realize very much that the time it's your fault, but it's also especially my fault, because what should you do? Well, what should you do? What you do with every client. It's not a special rules for self-damaging patients. You listen to the story, And first of all, when the self-harming is very actual, very urgent, you treat for the physical damage. Maybe you go to the hospital with the patient. But behind this question, there is a doubt, I understand. There is, I almost tend, not almost, I really tend to ask, what can be the problem here? Because what can be the problem? Help me. Self-harming patient comes in and
Sometimes the problem is that the parents, when they bring a teenager and they say like, this is my teenager, he has a problem, fix him. I did my part, I bring it to you.
Ah.
I actually, this is not my question, but I actually met situations like this when parents, they, okay, I did what I could, now it's your responsibility. And they know, but most of the time it's parents who need to change something with their relationship with this teenager, how they interact with them, but they don't want to. This is what I met all the time.
okay. Well, then, and at what age is the client now in your experience or in your what you imagine now?
15.
15. Well, that's a complication in a way. When a patient is 15 years old, in the law, I mentioned the law about the contract, there are three groups of patients with different rights. In this group, the child, 15 years old, has all kinds of rights to decide what treatment, yes or no at all. But the parents also. So that can be, and there can be very fierce fights, not only between the parent and the child, but also between the child and the caretaker, you, or the parent and the caretaker. In your example, as I understand, the parents bring the child, the self-damaging child, and say, here it is, do whatever yeah. Well, then the only question is, does the child agree to be helped by you? Because if you say, well, it's very interesting what you tell me, and I see the child damaging, but if the child does not want to be helped by me, I have no duty. Well, I have a duty that is to not help the child. It's forbidden now to help the child without consent. We're not talking about a real crisis situation. That's another situation. But when the parents say, and I know in very different forms this can happen. The parents say, well, here's the child, you do your work. The question is, does the child want to be helped by you in the way the parents, and some parents tell you, because parents know a lot, and they looked on the internet and said, well, there is a new method, I've seen it, it's, how do I call it, EMDR. Well, please, you can try it here. We think that we, so it is the patient who is the boss here. Yes, I know there's, but okay, yeah, moeten door. Suicidal, first of all, and maybe the most important, you, the one of you who work with, in Holland we call it regiebehandelaar. Some of you, I have tried to find a translation, treatment coordinator, but you, as a psychologist, you work, when you work in an institution with another experienced person, and the name here in Holland is regiebehandelaar. You know it? No.
The difference between if you work at a location, you don't work under a regiebehandelaar, but if you work in the GGZ, then you work, if you're working as a basic psychologist, you work underneath a regiebehandelaar.
But that would be the first thing, because in this, when you're not experienced in a case of this, suicidal clients step in, please don't try to do the work yourself. When it's urgent, please immediately go to the regiebehandelaar, the treatment coordinator, or call 112 when it is very, very urgent. You can do that. Or call to the, we have a first aid psychiatry center in Amsterdam. And I can give you, well, I can give you the number. It sounds very, very material, but it is called First Aid Psychiatry, SPA, and I simply give you the number, which can be very, very good for you, that you can simply, well, discuss with the people there who are very good in that thing. I give you the number. It is in Amsterdam, 020 and then 5235 433. Maybe you have it already. Maybe you know it already.
If you can repeat.
Repeat.
Yes.
020 52 35 433. SPA.
And can everyone call there? Also,
You
if
can
you're not
call,
working in Amsterdam?
everybody can call, it's 24, and maybe they say, well, we are the wrong address, but they will help you to the good address. But when it's very, very urgent and you are very, very worried, go to 112. And when it's not that urgent, talk about it with the experienced colleague, which is the regiebehandelaar, the treatment coordinator. Well, then we have a question, and maybe I can skip that because it's about the working as a private psychology. If the, well, here, no.
This one. What are the
No,
possibilities to work as a private psychologist?
yeah. Well, I talked about it yesterday, knowing this question. Everybody say working as a private psychologist is hardly impossible for you to reach that. It's hardly impossible because you, as a solo private, which means that you have your own office and you have one address and you are the only one who wants to help people.
We have 5 more minutes, by the way.
We have 5 minutes? 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Don't do it. Don't work as a private psychologist, not from your condition, because it is not paid. The patient had to pay themselves. You have to make all kinds of arrangements. For instance, with the complaints, you have to do a lot of things. So it is possible, but don't do it. And it's hardly done. And when you go ask the people who are responsible for your way through Holland, they will advise against it. Don't do it. That's the most sure thing.
Why? Why don't?
Don't do it because there's hardly a place for you. When you are just a private, well, then this can be the only, because I have 5 minutes. You have to make arrangements to make contact with an insurance company, because you want to have a contract with an insurance. They don't give you a contract. They don't. So the patient has to pay themselves. Yes. If you want to do that, well, go your private practice. But then maybe the best thing to do, and otherwise nobody will come to you, go make a combination or a connection with the Institute for Psychologists in Holland, the Netherlands Institute, which costs you almost 500 euros a year. Make sure that there is a complaint officer who wants to work with you. almost no complaint officer will work with you when you are from Ukraine and making here a private practice. They say, please connect yourself with an institution. Don't do it for yourself. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. You can go and sit and say, well, you're welcome, but then, well, then you have the troubles I mentioned. Yeah, you're. Don't do it. Don't do it.
And if you're a Dutch person?
Well, that's another thing. If you're Dutch,
Yes.
if you are Dutch,
Then do it.
Just do it, right?
well, it happens. It happens, but it hardly is possible for a Dutch private psychologist to get a contract from an insurance company. So it is possible, but the people who come there, they have to pay themselves, and well, it's hardly done even for Dutch psychologists.
And if you are lid of the vereniging?
That's another thing, but that when they're yeah, well, you have to pay for the vereniging, yeah, 500 a year. And you also have the complaint officer. And you must have, this is the last time I mentioned this, you must really have a contract with an insurance company who is going to pay for your services. No, even for Dutch psychologists, they don't do it, hardly. Work with a regiebehandelaar, work with an institution, but not on your own, not on your own. You're lost.
And why is it so difficult?
Sorry?
Why it's so difficult?
Because the conditions under which you have to work are very, very imperative, very imperative. That's why it's so bad. So, well, you can go and sit there and say, come to me. But, well, one of the first things of the people say, well, who are you? When I don't like what you do, where can I go to? What do I pay? And then you say, well, I have no connection with a complaint officer because nobody wants to work with me. That's the truth. And you have to pay yourself because no insurance company wants to. Well, that's not a very easy step up for a private company. It isn't. No. Don't.
Honestly, it sounds not that difficult, but I understand the main point. It's I have to be in a contact with some complaint officer.
Yeah.
For my clients have some support.
Yeah.
And that's why I need to go to institution, because in an institution usually I can contact to.
Exactly.
And this is only or something else?
No institution
Ah,
or a private practice. But it's,
client can pay from their pocket, not from insurance. Yes. It's,
only no.
of course, I understand.
When you're solo, when there is no insurance company who will pay for your services. Not when you're solo. When you are connected with an institution, maybe better member of the personal staff or members of the, then it's better.
But for example, it's a problem more about Ukrainian people and Ukrainian psychologists, because some people really try to make this session with Ukrainian psychologists, and if I'm not official psychologist, I can't help.
Yeah, you can help, but you can help when you are connected with an institution. There are lots of places for you. There are lots of places, but not as a solo. So here I read a private psychologist, and with private I understand solo. But as a psychologist, of course you can do a lot of things, but maybe we talked about the law and about the rules of law. You have to comply to all the rules of law, to the code of conduct. and to all the things that insurance companies ask from the institution. Ask your regiebehandelaar, ask the one with it is, well, it's not a drama, but there are lots of rules you have to follow. So the best thing to do is to, and I hope that you can help, and I know it really is a way that you can go, but please, as a psychologist from Overeen, try to make a contact with an institution. That's absolutely.
You have to round up. Yeah.
Sorry?
Yeah, sorry, but we have to round up.
Round up means
Round.
there's a charming way to say shut up. Yeah? Yeah.
I wanted to ask one last question.
Yeah.
Can you give the example of the institutions?
Sorry?
Can you give the example of the institutions, voorbeeld van de instituut?
For the institution
Yes, yes.
where you can work?
Where we can connect with. You said that it's important for psychologists to be connected to the institution of psychology.
What
And
can
is it some specific, or is it just one organization that calls institution of psychology?
The second one. An organization. An
You can
organization.
just Google institution of psychology in Netherlands.
And I
No,
think
no,
if
no,
you
no,
want
no.
to- If you're looking for a place to work, then you can of course always.
Yeah, but I think
Example.
the institution which you meant is NIP, right?
That's for the group, the professional group. That's a NIP, paying 500 guilders.
Yes.
Yeah, something like that. It's like NVBT, for example, Nederlandse Vereniging van Beeldende Therapeuten.
Yeah.
Something like that, right?
Yeah.
That's what you mean.
Yeah.
And you have different kinds of.
You have different kinds, but for psychologists, the main institution is NIP, really. NIP and NIP. But
And I think within the fourth webinar, we're also focusing a little bit more about these institutions that are there, and also accreditation.
But you don't have to, you don't have to be obliged to be a member of the NIP. It helps, of course, because it's good to be a member of a professional group. But it's not necessary. When you work in an institution with a regiebehandelaar who does the treatment together with you, you don't have to be a member of NIP to do your work. It helps. It helps to be, to have connections and to have information about the profession. But it's not necessary. It's a lot of money, and it's, I'm not here to try to withhold you to do that sort of thing, but the most important thing is that you have a connection with people already here. They have established an institution, whether a hospital, a mental hospital, GT, whatever. That's the main advice I can give you. And there are lots of ways to reach to that. People like Mira and Ursula, they help. You have, for instance, Mira, you know, there's a lot of ways. There's a lot of, from my try to. Yeah, I know that I have to shut my mouth. But if you don't shout against me, social work, client, a lawsuit. That's one. I know we have to stop. Thank you. I go on. Maybe the one who asked this question is here in the room. So that is about, is the client is in a lawsuit and the lawyer of the client asks information. What can you do? the simple answer is you can do anything the client is okay with, because the lawyer of the client is a representative of the client. It's a completely other thing when in a lawsuit the lawyer of the opposite party asks you information. The simple answer, you give 0. That's maximum. Maximum you give 0. If
Even if it's like official list from this lawyer. Like
Well-
or of this person, please give me.
colleague, my dear colleague, they try to impress you. They try to impress you, and they say, if you don't ask this man, and please, man, I urge you to. Please don't. No. Okay. I simply, well,
Thanks a lot, Leo.
yeah, okay.
I think there's a lot more to say.
Oh, a lot more to say.
And please all write down his email because I
You
think
can-
you will get a lot of questions now.
Yeah.
Thank you very
Yeah.
much. Thank you.
Well, okay.
Thanks a lot, and I think it's just a very broad topic, right? And there's so many questions connected to it, but I
Yes,
think this is
yes,
a
yeah.
beautiful introduction of.
Yeah.
What is-
Just consider it as an introduction, and all the rest will come on the email with you. If you want to do that, I'm not looking for work because every day there are clients, but I love to do this because for you it's a horrible jungle of rules. For me, and I know the jungle. I've been an animal in that jungle, so please take your profit from it.
All right.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay.
En nog een boekenbon.
Alsjeblieft. Dankjewel.
Heel erg bedankt.
Dankjewel.